Hello all, welcome back to the Biodocs channel. In this video today we are going to learn about the menstrual cycle, okay? The cyclic changes that are being seen in a female reproductive tract for every 28 days is being considered as a menstrual cycle. So the topic today we are going to deal is going to be the menstrual cycle, the cyclic changes, and the changes approximately is going to be considered for 28 to 30 days. So we are considering in this video regarding 28 days. Not every woman is going to have 28 days as a menstrual cycle. It may vary, okay? And we are going to see that the menstrual cycle is under the control of two of the gonadotropic hormones, which are being called as follicle stimulating hormone as well as a luteinizing hormone, which are gonadotropic or gonadotropin hormone, where tropin is going to be something which is related to affect. And these hormones are affecting whom? Gonads. Which gonads? Female gonads. These are affecting our female gonads, nothing but our ovaries. So we call these two hormones as gonadotropin hormone, and these are the follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Who secretes these follicle stimulating and luteinizing hormone? It's going to be the anterior lobe of your pituitary gland, which is being called as adenohypophysis. So this is nothing but your anterior lobe of your pituitary gland. Okay, these are secreting, this particular anterior lobe is going to secrete these two hormones, which are considered as gonadotropin hormones, which are going to act or show their action over ovaries. Okay, so what we'll do is we will, for our convenience, cut down our menstrual cycle phase of 28 days into like two halves. One is going to be the first 14 days and the other is going to be the other 14 days. Okay, the first 14 days we can see that the cycle is under the action of follicle stimulating hormone, and the second half is going to be under the action of another, which is going to be the luteinizing hormone. The first phase of this particular cycle, which runs from 1st to the 14th day, is being called as pre-ovulatory phase. Pre-ovulatory phase, or we can even call this as follicular phase. Okay, and the second phase is going to be called as post-ovulatory phase, or we can even call this as a luteal phase. Okay, so the first phase is under the action of FSH, and the second cycle, that is the second half, is going to be under the action of your luteinizing hormone and called as post-ovulatory or luteal phase. Okay, so first we will come towards the pre-ovulatory phase. Pre-ovulatory phase. This we'll consider from the 1st to the top of the 14th day. So now what happens here is this is going to be under the FSH control. Okay, this FSH, what it does is it is going to actually act on one of the ovarian follicle. It is going to act on one of the ovarian follicle of a ovary, of a single ovary, not both the ovaries. Okay, if it is going to be, if you are going to consider the female reproductive tract, okay, this is going to be what you call is a uterus, and we have a fallopian tubes. Okay, the fallopian tubes here, the ovaries here. So just consider here. So we can see that this particular structure, if the one of the month, if it is going to be this particular action of the FSH on this ovary, the second next month it is going to be on the next ovary. Okay, one side, one month it's going to be right side, it is going to be the left side. So it's going to be successive months. What I can say is the successive months FSH is going to act. So the FSH action is going to be on the alternate ovaries. This is going to be the action. What it actually does is, what is the action of FSH is going to be, function is going to be, it is going to help in the growth. It is going to help in the growth or development of one of the, only one ovarian follicle. Okay, growth or development of this particular single ovarian follicle in a ovary. Okay, and what it does is it is going to stimulate this growing ovarian follicle to secrete estrogen. Okay, and this estrogen, what is does is this is a feminizing hormone which is actually responsible for the growth of the breast, the rounded body, high pitched voice. Along with that, what estrogen does is it thickens your endometrial lining. What is endometrial lining? The inner lining of your uterus is called as endometrium, and that lining is called as endometrial lining. But the thickening of the endometrial lining is very, very less by the estrogen. Okay, this is the thing that you can remember. And secondly, what happens is the second phase is going to be the post-ovulatory post-ovulatory phase. What happens is you can consider this from the 14th to that of the 28 days, the second half. Okay, remember children, on the 14th day what happens is the FSH hormone secretion is going to at once stop. Okay, now the pituitary gland starts secreting luteinizing hormone. And on the 14th day, the luteinizing hormone levels are going to spike up. They are going to increase more. Because of the increased luteinizing hormone, now what happens is the ovarian follicle, which is having a centrally seated ova lined up by the ovarian follicular cells, what it does is this is going to rupture this, and the ova is going to be released outside. Okay, so the release of the ova out is going to be called as what? The rupture of ovarian follicle cells and release of ova follicle cells and release of the ova from this mature Graafian follicle. Release of the ova is being called as ovulation process. So on the 14th day, under the action of the luteinizing hormone, there is ovulation. Exam में कैसे याद रखोगे? L for luteinizing hormone in the ovulation process. Now, what happens is from the 15th to the 28th day, we can even see that the luteinizing hormone is going to show its action, but there is no FSH now. What happens is that is on the 14th day, your ova got released. Now this ova starts moving to the fallopian tubule. Okay, and it is going to travel down through the fallopian tubule. At least it takes 7 days, but it is going to be active for 3 days. What for? It is going to be active, waiting for the sperm to arrive to have, anticipating for a fertilization process. Okay, so you can consider that it is going to be your 14th, 15th, 16th days, 3 days. Your ova is going to be active for the fertilization process, and it is trying to move down through the fallopian tubule into the uterus. Okay, this is going to be seen. Now, what happens is the empty ovarian follicle, because the ova is being released, children. This is the first action that has happened. Now, from the 15th to 28 days, what is happening is the leftover follicular cells now are forming a structure which is being called as corpus luteum, where corpus means body, luteum means yellow. This is called as yellow body. This is in Latin. Okay, corpus means it is going to be the body. Now, what happens is this corpus luteum, under the action of luteinizing hormone, your corpus luteum starts producing a hormone which is being called as progesterone. This is being called as progesterone. This is being called otherwise as a pregnancy hormone. We are going to call this as a pregnancy hormone. Who is secreting this? Corpus luteum under the influence of luteinizing hormone. See, now what is going to happen is, what is a function of progesterone? The basic main function of the progesterone, so the first function is going to be, what it does is it is going to actually increase the thickening of your endometrial lining when compared to that of your estrogen. Secondly, what it does is it is going to increase the growth of the blood vessels increase the growth of the blood vessels, because your endometrium has thickened, it's increasing in the dimension, so the blood vessels are growing. Okay, as well as you can see that it is going to even help in thickening of these blood vessels, and this process is being called as vascularization process. These are happening for the nourishment of your embryo, anticipating for the pregnancy. Okay, next thing is, because progesterone is a pregnancy hormone. Okay, so we can even see that this progesterone is going to increase the basic metabolism of the body, due to which what happens is your body temperature is going to be raised up, and especially the body temperature raises up on ovulation day, because on ovulation phase, who is more? Luteinizing hormone is more. So under the action of the luteinizing hormone, there was ovulation process. Remember that we can even use the temperature as one of the indication for the luteinizing hormone. Generally, we have 98.6 degree Fahrenheit as our body temperature, but during the ovulation phase, especially on the 14th day, woman's body temperature raises by 1 degree. This is important. Okay, and in order to know whether ovulation has happened, for example, we have some couples who are not blessed with a baby, so what they do is doctors suggest them to go for testing a ovulation kit, that is a urine test. What you can do is that this is going to actually, ovulation kit is going to check the levels of the luteinizing hormone. So you know that on the 14th day the level of the LH is more, right? So when you go for a urine test, now what happens, if it is going to be a positive result, it means that she had a high levels of LH. इसका मतलब क्या हुआ है कि 3 days she is going to be active, that is your ova is going to be active for the fertilization. If the couple are going to have an intercourse for these 3 days, they are going to have a 90% of chance to get fertilized, that ova is going to get fertilized, they get a chance to become parents. Okay, this is going to be an ovulation kit, that is going to be a magic done by the progesterone. See, remember children, if there is no entry of sperm, if there is no fertilization, you know that fertilization, you know that your ova traveled, it took 1 week to travel from the ovaries to that of your fallopian tubule, it moves down through the uterus. Okay, so the fertilization happens in the, where? In the fallopian tubule. After that, your embryo takes, that is your zygote is going to take at least like a week to travel down to the uterus, and later it is the embryo is going to get implanted into the endometrial thickened lining over there. Okay, if at all, if there is no fertilization process, what happens is at the end of the menstrual cycle, on the 28th day, on the 28th day, what happens is your pituitary gland stops secreting the luteinizing hormone. So what happens now, there is no one to stimulate or activate your corpus luteum to secrete what? To secrete the progesterone. So there is no one to activate or stimulate. So now what happens is the corpus luteum body is going to get shrinked, and now the corpus luteum, as it is shrinking, it turns into white colored body, which is being called as corpus albicans. We are going to call it as corpus albicans. So since the corpus luteum started shrinking, there will be no more progesterone production. If there is no more production of progesterone, what happens is there is no more thickening of your endometrial lining, there is no vascularization process. And secondly, remember children, during our periods, what happens is the second half, your body starts bloating up because of the more fluid retention in the body. That more fluid retention in the body is just because of progesterone only anticipating for the pregnancy, and this is going to cause what? Bloating. So these all are absent in the absence of your, what we call as, your absence of progesterone. So now what happens is all the what we call is, whichever thickened endometrial lining is there. For example, if you see here, the thickened endometrial lining, because there is no pregnancy, we do not need it because we do not require implantation, there is no nourishment process that is required. So all these things start shedding up. The thickened endometrial lining, the growth, the newly dimension of the grown blood vessel are going to shed now. So as when By the end of the 28th day, under the absence of LH, now the shedding started of whom? Of the thickened endometrial lining, the newly grown up blood vessels started shedding, which is going to lead to what? Bleeding. Started bleeding now. Now you can see that the post-ovulatory phase, what has happened. Now let me take a fresh page, just give you the first to the 14th day, it was FSH action. Okay, and you could see that the first 5 days we are going to have bleeding because that is the shedding of the thickened endometrial lining. Okay, later we can see that under the action of FSH we started getting the growth of the follicles, it started secreting estrogen. This has very in a very less quantity it started thickening up the endometrial lining. Thickening process is being seen here, and on the 14th day there was no FSH, but we could see the spiking of LH, which has resulted in a process called as ovulation. And 15th, 14th, 16th day, actually, if there is going to be an entry of a sperm, there will be a what you call is a 100% fertilization process here. And remember, children, later stages till the end of the 28th, okay, end of what happens is just after the ovulation phase, the third week and the end of the starting of the fourth week, because these are the first 2 weeks, okay, the first and the second week are here. The onset of the third week we got ovulation, and later third week and the start of the fourth week, what has happened, we started actually the what you call is corpus luteum started producing the progesterone under the action of whom? Under the action of luteinizing hormone. And at the end of the 28th day, no LH, so no progesterone. So now what happens? There should be shedding. And this shedding is nothing but what? Bleeding. That is going to be this phase. This is going to be the cyclic change that you can see. Just remember that your ovarian follicular cells are going to have receptors. They are going to have receptors, and these receptors, these are the receptors, and these receptors are going to be for whom? They are the receptors for the FSH as well as LH. Okay, the first 2 weeks when FSH comes, what happens is it actually binds to this particular receptor, and then it is going to activate this particular ovarian follicle to grow up and secrete the estrogen. And the later third, fourth weeks, what happens is it is going to be LH receptors. The LH receptors which are going to act on the particular what you call is corpus luteum is nothing but the leftover follicular cells which are being present. So every cell is going to have different receptors for the different hormones. So that is the reason I'm trying to specify that these are going to have the receptors for this. Remember, children, the gonadotropic hormones, which are going to be the follicle stimulating hormone, and the luteinizing hormone are what? Gonadotropic hormones. Released by whom? Released by your pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is present where? It is present connected to the brain. So now this FSH and LH are acting where? They are acting on ovaries. So now ovaries produce what? Estrogen and progesterone. So who are these estrogen and progesterone? They are going to be the ovarian hormones, not the gonadotropin. Okay, these are ovarian hormones. Ovarian hormones, where they show their action? They show their action on uterus by thickening the endometrial lining. Who thickens the endometrial lining more? Progesterone. In a very less quantity, it is going to be the estrogen. This is a examination point of view. I made cut to cut all the points for you all children for this particular menstrual cycle. I hope you all have understood. Okay. Now what I'll do is, children, let me share my screen with you all such that it will be easy for you all to actually check these slides and understand how the action is going to be executed on these particular what we call as your female reproductive tract. So children, this is going to be the female reproductive tract. Excuse me. These are going to be your pair of ovaries. So if the first month it's going to be FS action acting on this, next later month it is going to act on the ovarian follicle of this particular ovary. And this is going to be your fallopian tubule, where the after the ovulation, your ova travels into the fallopian tubule. Around it takes 1 week to travel down here, but it's active for 3 days. And once if it's going to be fertilization done, it is going to move down to this particular what you call as uterus, and it is going to get implanted here into the endometrial lining. This is the endometrium, and is a hollow, long, muscular tube that we have in the female reproductive tract, which is otherwise called as a birth canal, which is being called as a vagina. Uterus is opening into the vagina through an opening which is being called as a cervix or a cervical opening. Okay, and let us see the changes that are happening in the endometrial lining here through this slide. Okay, let me just zoom it for you that such that you can actually see the changes. So this is the first 5 days there is bleeding happening, and later under the action of the follicle stimulating hormone, you can see that estrogen is being secreted. So your estrogen is going to be this blue curve. So slowly the estrogen levels are increasing, and estrogen is going to actually raise the thickening of your endometrial lining, but it's very, very less endometrial lining getting thickened up. Okay, these are the changes that you can see. And on the 14th day, there is luteinizing hormone more. You can see that the green graph that you can see is going to be the luteinizing hormone. Its level has increased and spiked on the 14th day, which resulted in the ovulation process. And there is no FSH now. And under the action of the luteinizing hormone, now what happens is your corpus luteum starts producing progesterone, but it even produces estrogen also, but the estrogen will be very, very minute. You can see the graph of the estradiol or the estrogen, very, very, very less. What is estradiol is nothing but the estrogen. So from the second phase, that is a post-ovulatory. What is post-ovulatory? After the ovulation. What is before ovulation? Pre-ovulated. Okay, so post-ovulatory, you can see very little estrogen, but a very high progesterone, which is actually, you can see that the progesterone has increased the graph of the thickening of the endometrial lining. You can see the new blood vessels which are growing. They're growing in the dimension. Okay, these are all the changes that you can see. And at the end of the 28th day, the luteinizing hormone is going to drop down. You can see that slowly the luteinizing hormone is going to go nil over here. Okay, these are all the changes that you can see. And nextly, what I will show you is the ovarian follicles. The ovarian follicles are these where they are getting matured, and it starts secreting estrogen. And you can see that the ova has released, this is ovulation, where it turned into a yellow body called as corpus luteum that has degenerated to form corpus albicans again. Okay, you can see that the body temperature, this is the body temperature of the woman, where you can see on the ovulation day there is a 1 degree raise in the body temperature from 36 to 37, and later it is going to be high, but by the end of the menstrual cycle it is going to be dropped down. Okay, I hope children you have understood this. Okay, and coming on to the last slide, let me display this will be giving you a more clear idea on the phases. This will be the pre-ovulatory phase where we have bleeding, and we are going to have follicular phase where your follicles are maturing, and ovulation phase where the ova is released, and luteal phase where there is secretion of progesterone, and there is going to be the thickening of endometrium as well as vascularization process, and at the end it is going to be again the shedding of all these things, and the shedding is going to start up again the menstruation process here. Okay, I hope you all have understood this particular uh, procedure, what I was trying to make you all understood of the means make you all understand this particular procedure of menstrual cycle. If you have liked this video, please hit the like button and try to share this channel with many, and subscribe my channel, and try to please comment in the comment section as of how you felt this particular content over here. Okay, thank you all, thank you once again.